Hello class and welcome to lecture number 1. This is kind of lecture 1A here. We're going to have one section, this first video where we just go over the syllabus, and then I'll post another video a little bit later that'll be the actual lesson for today, and that will be on our standard operating procedures. If you haven't noticed, I posted a reading for that standard operating procedures, but a little bit earlier today I also posted a podcast that you can listen to. You can either listen to one or the other. So for that message board assignment, either do the reading, which is a little dry, I have to admit, or listen to the podcast, which is an NPR Hidden Brain, a little bit more exciting. Both of them are going to give you some background for why SOPs are so important, though, so you can choose to do either one, whichever works best for you, and then just fill out those two assignments based on that. Okay, so let's get going here on our syllabus. Obviously, like I said, we're going to be posting all of our messages and videos, hopefully by Thursdays at 5 p.m. All assignments for that will generally be due by the next week, and that will enable me to kind of go over them with the lectures. Okay. This is supposed to be a course, like I said in my previous video, that capitalizes on some of the mistakes I've made over my career and some of the things that have just taken me way too long. I'm hoping to kind of preemptively strike that down for you guys so that everybody can be as productive as possible while you're in grad school and even the first couple of years of your professorship or wherever your next step might take you. So, some of our course objectives here, we're going to get into these a little bit later, so you don't have to read through those right now. The textbook I will emphasize is important. Some of our exercises, specifically for our lecture at the end of the month on the 27th of February, you'll see in a minute, is directly from that book. So that'll help you with that. I would encourage you to share it if you want, because you don't have to purchase it on your own if you're going to be working with other people in the class as well. I also have a copy in my office, which you are welcome to borrow. So if we get to that point and you haven't gotten it, feel free to stop by, send me an email. We can get that taken care of. Things that you're going to need, some basic understanding of a lot of these programs, Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. We're going to be using these a lot during the semester. Part of being, part of the professional skills that I really like to go over are how to use these effectively and some of the pitfalls that people fall into a lot that I see either at conferences, when working with other collaborators, those sorts of things that just make people's jobs harder, and we want to avoid those. Okay, so today we'll be going over standard operating procedures. Next week we're doing power calculations. Hopefully you've heard a little bit about those, but we're going to get into some of the real basics about how to use G-Power, which is a program to use that. Then we'll get into protocol schematics. This becomes especially important as you start to get into publishing. And even with, for example, maybe your proposal for your thesis, your defense for your thesis, if you're presenting that information to somebody who doesn't know about your experiment, if you have a nice little picture or a flow chart that can demonstrate it, that's going to be a lot easier than you trying to either write it out or just tell it to them verbally. So we're going to go over how to make an effective protocol schematic. Data collection sheets is something that I find to be very important when I'm doing human subjects research. This may or may not be as important depending on the type of research that you're doing. However, I think the process of going through and making a data collection sheet is important overall. Excel lecture basics number 1. This is going to be some real basics. I know this is going to be review for some of you, but for some I think it's going to be an introduction as well. And I think it's just some standard skills that you need to have if you're going to be working in Excel, if you're going to be using it for calculations. It's really important to have some of these. A couple tasks that we're going to go over when we do that are, for example, if we wanted to calculate area under the curve for a glucose tolerance test, how would we do that using Excel? What about classifying cardiovascular risk? We're going to use some of these different formulas up here to enable us to do that. Next, the exciting scientific table and figure formation lecture. This gets into the nitty-gritty of what makes a good table, what makes a good figure. I know that as a graduate student, when I first started doing this, I made some pretty terrible tables and figures that were basically unintelligible to my mentor. And it took me a long time to figure out how to make ones that were really good in publication quality. If you can do this on your first go-around when you're working on your first manuscript or 10th manuscript, it's going to make it a lot easier for your committee, for your co-authors to get through that and say, okay, this is a good paper, let's get this ready for publication. Next, we're going to go into some professional communication. This is something I find to be kind of lacking in some areas when you go to a conference. Scientists are not known for being the best at speaking, but we're going to get into when and why and how do you get in touch with other people. One big thing, especially in graduate school and as you're starting your career, that you're going to find out, you need a lot of help from a lot of people who are way smarter and way busier than you are. How do we maximize our communication to give ourselves the best likelihood of getting a positive response from those people? We'll have spring break, and then we'll get into Excel lecture number 2. My buddy Alec Muthig from IT is hopefully going to be providing this lecture for us. In our last offering of this class, we did these in class, and he came in and gave these. He's an expert with Excel. He's worked with a bunch of people, previous graduate students, on how to build these pivot tables and how to expedite your time using Microsoft Excel. Then on the second, this is actually one of my favorite lectures overall. We're going to create your first CV. Some people may have one, but we're going to work on making a new one in a good format that you can continuously add to over the course of graduate school. I know that when I got to the end of my PhD, for all my applications, I had to submit my CV. At that point, I had to create my first CV. When I did that, I had to then think back over the previous 6 years, actually 8 years, because I took 2 years off in between my master's and my PhD to make a CV. This required me thinking about, okay, what conference did I go to? Okay, whose poster was I on? If we create this now early in your career, I'm hoping this will just be a living and breathing document that you take with you for the rest of your career, and it will be easier to add to than to start when you apply for your first job. Now, we're going to be doing something here. Let's see if I can do this. Hopefully, if Dr. Smith comes through like he has in the past, we are also going to be adding in some headshots. Now, this is something that I know seems a little bit out of the ordinary for professional skills, but having an appropriate headshot is something that's important. As you make the next, world's best discovery, you're going to get asked to be presenting at different conferences. When you go to those conferences, they're probably going to ask for a headshot of you. They're not going to want a picture of you with your dog, even though it's probably pretty cute. They're going to want a professional looking headshot. So in the past, what we've done is we've set up time for a photographer to come in, and we'll do a professional headshot, and then we're going to incorporate that headshot into a Google Scholar profile, a ResearchGate profile, and a LinkedIn profile. I know that a lot of you may be, and also I won't pressure you to do any of these. I understand that some people have a reticence to have a digital presence with some things, but I will make an argument for the importance of them. For example, when I first started working with a corporate sponsor, which is Danone, who sponsors a lot of my water-based research, when I first got there, one of the program managers said to me, I tried to find you on LinkedIn and I couldn't find you. And I said, yeah, that's because I don't have a LinkedIn profile. It's not for scientists. We don't need that. We just need a PubMed page in my reference list. And she said to me, no, especially if you're not in the United States and they're in France and you're looking for or thinking about a potential future in industry, having a LinkedIn profile is how they all keep in touch and how all recruitment happens. My friends who are in business over here in the United States all say the same thing. It's a necessary evil, but if we have enough information on your LinkedIn profile, we'll be able to get you that, at least limit the chance that a person can't find you. Last, for Excel, we'll have a third lecture dealing with Excel, which is an advanced Excel skills lecture that'll be given by Alec once again. Then we'll get into kind of some of the presentation portion, and this is something that I really made a emphasis in my career when I go to a bunch of different lectures recently. And what we're going to have here is I'm going to basically give a lecture this time on non-computer based presentation skills. So when you give a presentation, what are the things away from the computer that you can do to ensure that's a good presentation? On this week and the following week, on the 23rd, I'm going to have about half the class in the first one and half the class in the second one. We have this at 1 through 8. We have about 13 people in this class right now, so these numbers will obviously change. Give a short, brief, bad slide presentation, and this will require you to record with your computer a short lecture based on a slide deck that you already have. You don't have to make a bad slide presentation. I'm sure that you have in your hard drive somewhere a bad slide deck that you've presented on in your past. This could be from undergrad, this could be from high school, but I want to get an example of a presentation that you think is bad. Then, after we go through a quick little break here dealing with reference manager software, then we're going to move on to creating slides for a scientific presentation. And I'm going to go over all the do's and don'ts for how to make a good slide for a scientific presentation. And I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of warning here. I don't use slides for when I teach. I'm not using slides right now. You can see that I'm using the PDF of the syllabus on the side here. The reason I don't use slides when I teach is because it takes me about 1 hour to create one good slide. And if I had to create all the slides for a 3-hour lecture here, combined with 3 1-hour lectures for XPhys each week, I wouldn't have time to do any other research, any other service, so you can understand why I don't do that for class. Now, however, when you go to a presentation, maybe if you're going to a conference and you're doing a free communication, it's a 10-minute talk. When that comes in, now you're talking about 8 to 10 slides. Then it's going to be really important to do that. But there are good things and there are bad things. And what I have to say about my experience going to conferences, I'm sure some of you experienced this as well. I've seen a lot of really good scientists present a lot of really good data in the most boring possible way. And what I want for you guys leaving this class is to completely avoid the opportunity for that happening in your careers. And then last, we're going to go over some of the really interesting stuff, which I find is the minutia of getting an article published. First, we're going to talk about reviewing an article. So if you're reviewing for somebody else, how do you want to go about doing that? And then we'll go through the process of an online journal submission. I told a story this week of the first time I wanted to submit an article online with an online journal submission. I had an hour, and my mentor had told me, hey, I want you to submit this by this date. And I said, sure. And I had an hour clear the day, 4 to 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. I'm like, I'm going to knock this out right here. And I sat down and looked at the laundry list of documents and formats and information that I needed that was outside of the scope of the general article right there that was needed, and I just about started crying at my desk. So we're going to go through that so that when you submit your first article, second article, 10th article, you'll have a checklist right by your side to make sure you have everything you need so that that can go as smoothly as possible. I can't promise it's always going to take under an hour, but I can promise you that at least you'll be prepared and get it done, hopefully on the first try. Then we'll deal with dealing with editors and proofs, and if you're dealing with proofs, that's a good thing because your article is about to get published. So, one point I want to highlight, literally right here, there are no exams in this class. This is not meant to be a stressful class. This is based on, an applied class to get you the skills that are going to make you successful in this program, in your graduate program that you may be in, and once you leave this program as well. There are a bunch of homework assignments, though. Each week you're going to have an assignment to do out of class. I realize that you don't want to sit here and listen to a 3-hour lecture every week. When I taught this class in person in the past, I had about an hour of lecture, followed by 2 hours of applied use. So whether that be making a video, whether that be you're going to make an SOP with partners in class, that would be how it's done. So in retrospect, we can't do that here with an online class, but what we can do is have you do that work on your own, and then the other time that you're going to spend is one-on-one time with me, either by email, meeting with me in person in my office, or by phone or video chat or something like that, going over what you turned in. And the purpose of that is going to be to make whatever you turned in the best it can be. So there's going to be a lot of editing back and forth, and that's supposed to be the learning process. So our assignments overall, we're going to do a standard operating procedure. You're going to do a power calculation based on a reference that I provide. We're going to make a protocol schematic. You're going to make a data collection sheet. This is one of my favorites, and I can't wait to present this to all the people in our department. We're going to make a phone call, email, personal visit, text message algorithm. So you'll learn about how to make algorithms a little bit in today's lecture, but we're going to basically provide this to understand under which circumstances should you do each of these types of personal communication with a person. Obviously, you'll have your CV, your LinkedIn page, and hopefully a headshot as well. We're going to have some nicely formatted tables. You're going to understand how to be a peer reviewer, do a peer reviewer document. You're going to respond to some reviewer comments, and then also you're going to learn how to use some reference manager software. 2 presentations that you'll give. One will be your Excel calculation teaching presentation. So in Excel lecture number 1, we're going to give you some basic skills. From that, I want you to create a tutorial video using your screen capture to be able to teach somebody how to do a different Excel calculation using any data sheet that you might want. The second part is going to be a free communication slide presentation. This is going to be you taking your bad presentation. So presentation is split over 2 weeks. First week, you're going to give your 5-minute presentation on your bad slide deck, and then you're going to talk about why it's a bad slide deck. Then we're going to use the skills that we get in our good slide presentation skills lectures, and then you'll revamp that, change your slides up, make it better, and then what you'll do is give a 10-minute presentation in a better format. And the purpose of that is for you to give a, make the edits, understand why you're making those edits, and then hopefully apply those to future ones. Each week there's going to be an online discussion as well. Hopefully you've seen the one that's come out already for this week that's on standard operating procedures. Generally it's going to be based on either that week's coming lecture or the previous lecture from the week before, and you'll generally have to make 2 posts. 1 original post and 1 response post. I'll go in, kind of moderate that, chime in when I need to, and if you do post those twice, you get 5 points each week for that. You can see the general breakdown of points here overall. Grades will be determined by points, no rounding up. Let's see. Online class, so I try to get all of my emails back to you guys. Usually I'm pretty good about doing it within a day, but my policy is within 2 business days. So that means if you're emailing me on a Friday afternoon, hopefully I'll get that back to you by Monday or Tuesday morning at the latest. So 2 business days from that time. I'm kind of a stickler for netiquette guidelines, so if you're emailing me, don't do what one of my undergrads did last semester and say, hey, what is this? And just, you guys are professionals by this point. You should understand that a little bit better. Obviously, there's no attendance. You don't have to be online at a particular time. You have about a week to do everything. And like I said, you can expect to spend about 3 to 5 hours per week engaged in watching the lectures, watching the videos, maybe doing the readings, and doing some of the assignments afterwards as well. If you don't get those 70 points, it will significantly impact your grade. We have some points here. If you need help with any of the online content, if you need any help making videos, that's not necessarily any, relevant to this right here, but we can provide help to you for that as well. There shouldn't be any cheating because everything's pretty original in this one. We're going to go over how to properly cite in this class, so that shouldn't be much of a problem. Not too much writing involved. These are the points we're required to have in here, but I do have a duty report, and you guys should know about that. So make sure that you keep all of your videos, all of your posts appropriate for class. Assume that everybody is going to be seeing this content. And lastly, grade discussion. I am human. I make mistakes when I'm grading things. I try to be as transparent with my rubrics up front. However, I'm going to make mistakes. And if I grade one of your assignments and you get it back and you go, what the heck? I should have gotten a better grade on this. This wasn't a mistake. I think Dr. Johnson made a mistake. Please, I want you to contact me and have a discussion. However, I will say, do the best to contact me within 7 days of receiving the grade. Nothing is going to make me more grumpy than if I get an email 2 days before grades are due saying, hey, that assignment we had back in February? I think you graded me wrong. No. Well, now what I just think is that you're fishing for points, not that you actually think I did something wrong. So do your best to do your due diligence to alert me to any negative grades or inaccurate grades as early as possible. And that'll about cover it for the syllabus. Like I said, this should be posted. If you have any questions on this, feel free to send me an email, and we will go through week by week. Our kind of rough outline is subject to change, so I will alert you and update the online syllabus if anything does change. There could be things that come up. Maybe we're not able to get Alec to get one of his lectures on the date we want it. I'll make sure to update that so you guys are aware as soon as those updates are known. All right, stay tuned. There's going to be the standard of practice lecture posted very soon, so look out for that.